Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Phantasmal Force. Okay. Um, all right, I got some questions, but let's start off. What does this spell do, Sam?
All right, the gist of it is you make a worst nightmare appear, or it doesn't have to be a nightmare, it can be any kind of force, appear in someone's brain and torment just that person with it for a while. The actual mechanics of it is you pick someone within 60 feet of you and you make an illusion in their mind. They make an int save, and if they fail it, you get this object that's like 10 feet or smaller, this thing. So it can be like a terrifying sheep goat monster, or it could be a regular townsperson. Doesn't really matter. It to the person will have sound, temperature, any other stimuli. They can touch it and they'll feel like it's tangible, all those things. They can make and they make an investigation check, like most illusions, to determine if it's false or not. If they succeed, they realize it's an illusion, the spell ends. That text, there's probably a bigger conversation to have about how to do investigation checks and stuff to discern illusions, because it's kind of messy. But for the sake of it, the spell has that little rider. And then additionally, again, because the creature thinks the thing's real, it will rationalize any outcomes that happen that don't make sense with the illusion being there, which is a weird line of text. It will, like, if anything would happen that would become like, oh, it's very clear this no longer can exist, I think it ends the spell. So like if trying to walk over a Phantasmal Bridge, I'm sorry. If it does try and do those things, it still rationalizes it as exists. So the example it gives is if it tries to go over a bridge and falls through the hole, it'll find a way to believe that there was just like a hole in the bridge or something they didn't notice. Finally, you can just whack them with it. They can just you can have it do a d6 damage, psychic damage of your choice whenever it's within 5 feet of it. And you can just do that. It perceives the damage appropriate to the illusion. So it as its whole has a lot of things that come together to make a pretty complicated effect to think about. In practice, it's very fun to use, and I would recommend it to anyone who'd be interested in trying the illusory tormentor illusionist characters. They're really fun, and this fits the bill perfectly.
All right, my first question was going to be, how does this differ from other? Because this is a second level spell, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, how does it differ from things like minor illusion, or what is the other one, silent image, or even major illusion? But yeah, I think you kind of spelled that out in that it only affects one person.
Mm-hmm. And very crucially, the person is convinced it exists. That's, I think, the really big illusion differentiator is they can feel like they interact with a thing when no one else can, where most other illusions always don't hold up to investigation. Even like high level illusion magic like project image does not hold up to physical contact, which makes some interesting problems to solve as the illusionist.
Yeah, I had other questions. What were they? I don't remember. Yeah, well, what were we saying about the intelligence checks?
Okay, so illusion magic has this awkward.
I'm sorry, I was thinking, if they're so convinced it's real, what is going to make them make an intelligence check? If I'm looking at the computer here in front of me, all right, I'm not questioning its existence.
That is where things get messy. So with a lot of other illusions, I think the line I typically would advise to DMs as to when you should make these intelligence checks, these investigation checks, are when the illusion is doing things outside of the bounds of reality in kind of odd ways, right? Like if you see wind clearly blowing, like a large gust of wind comes through and the hair of the illusion doesn't get interacted with it because the illusionist doesn't think to do that, that is where I would have the investigation checks come in. In this case, it's even more complicated than that. And like you said, they're convinced it exists and they are willing to rationalize other things being wrong to believe it exists, right? It has the text that says, like, even if they were to fall through the bridge, they still will find a way to believe it's there, which leads me to wonder, okay, what has to happen for them to question whether or not this is an illusion? And I think it's probably very close to just being told, hey, that's in your head and an illusion by someone they find to be credible, which is a whole lot of hoops to jump through. And whenever those kinds of hoops aren't jumped through, whenever like a player casts the spell and the DM's like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense that there would be a sheep goat monster running out of the shadows here, and this creature is going to choose to not believe that and make an investigation check to see if they can overcome it. As a player, that can kind of feel like, well, that's not what the spell says. The spell says that they just believe it. And you're saying that they have a chance to, or a choice to not believe it. And that doesn't make any sense. Oh, pardon. And you'll get to like some of these adversarial moments. You'll get to some of these moments where DMs that are really really happy to like just say, nah, they believe it and the illusion's good. Those tables will vary the power differently wildly from tables where the DM's checking you every 5 seconds to be like, investigation check, investigation check, investigation check. And just the illusion might fall apart after a couple seconds, depending on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to that movie, A Beautiful Mind. Did you see that? Okay.
A long time ago, yes.
Yeah. Just, how much convincing this guy needs to even question that his, friend and the little girl are not real.
Yes. And I think you're going to really find it's going to vary completely and wildly table to table as to whether or not what prompts is enough to be, it makes the investigation check. At my tables, again, like I expressed earlier, I feel like it'd have to be close to the most trusted person the creature has that's seeing the illusion would have to like inform them they're seeing an illusion for it to like them to actually begin to crack. Right? They have to be able to trust someone more than themselves for them to make the check. And otherwise, I just don't, because the spell specifically says it believes and rationalizes this into existence.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe I might like be slightly more flexible, and the wilder and wilder it is, the easier it is to disbelieve. But that kind of ruins a lot of the fun of the spell, because I think a lot of the fun of the spell is, especially in a world with dragons and flying monsters and eldritch tentacle horrors and hadars out there and pocket dimensions, like how wild does something have to be for you to not believe it could exist in this world? With fairies and undead and the Shadowfell and the Varying Planes, right? Like it has to be egregiously outrageous, right?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, in this world, those things are normal. Where the sheep goat monster, whatever you said, that's all right. Yeah, dragons and fairies seem strange to us, but not to the people in the fantasy world. But the sheep goat monster, what is that crazy thing?
Sure. I think that a better analogy for that would be like they just see a convertible and they're like, well, this isn't a real object. What purpose does this random weird series of shapes on wheels have? Like that can't possibly be real. Sure. I don't know. I think because there's such a giant diversity of stuff and like how much can like a single individual entity retain as to like, oh yeah, that's clearly real. Like does every creature and person in Faerun have a idea of every single monster that exists? Probably not. So at what point do you go, well, this monster probably exists because of the other ones kind of exist? I don't know. I think there's a little bit more room to be like, there's a whole lot of nonsense here and there's more of a willingness to believe the nonsense, but
it's a minute-long spell.
True.
So whatever. I say if they fail the saving throw, they believe in the goat monster or whatever.
Yeah, for 1 whole minute.
Yeah.
The duration does kind of hamper the use cases of it, but I think like most illusion magic, with a good idea, this spell would like again, like all illusion magic, this can flip the game on its head. This is the kind of spell, getting someone to believe something is true for a minute and making that thing affect them and affect the world is wild. Like you can, at minimum, like a politics heavy table, right? You could do it so a very important figure appears in the mind of the person and they believe that the important figure appears. They declare some declaration of war or peace or some other enormously important message upon them within a minute. They go to bail, and now you have this entity that believes, oh crap, war is starting. The former leader of the place came and declared war on us. Now what do we do? And then they have a whole bunch of actions that will change the outcome of the world dramatically. Likewise, you can just do something as simple as if you're going in to try and burgle a shop, you can just be like, we're going to go in pretending that we're inspectors of food and health safety, and I will conjure a food and health safety instructor with phantasmal image in the mind of the shopkeep to confirm that our existence is valid, and they just believe it. And then all of a sudden, your tiny little scam is just 100% legitimate to that person. It's...
All right. Now, I noticed you had 2 good examples there of how to use this spell. Neither one of them involved inflicting damage. Now, this is speculation on my part, but
okay.
Do you think the spell is hindered by having the damage thing included? making people think, oh, this is a damage spell. That's what I'm going to use it for. Or is it even necessary?
I don't think it's necessary. I think it being on there is helpful. I actually would rather it be like 1 damage, because then it would be even more inclined to be like, okay, this isn't here for the damage. This is here to enforce that this is a spell that like it's physically and like the creatures around it acknowledge it, right? I don't think you need a lot of damage to feel that way. This is the kind of thing where like they give the examples of fire, pools of acid, lava, right? You don't need to go that extreme with it, but the fact that I can go that extreme helps, and that's kind of where the D6 comes in. If you do want to use this as a damage spell, I mean, this conceivably, if you like lock something down or are going to maintain concentration for a minute, this is just a free D6 damage every round, right? You don't have to use your action or anything to do it. You can just have the creature take a D6 damage every round for the rest of the time for a minute. For second level spells, it's probably not worth it. That being said, it is one way an illusionist can be like, this is how I deal more damage. You can do this alongside, like after the first cast, every subsequent round, you can still be casting other damaging spells. This is like one of the few instances illusions can do damage. So while it's not amazing, and I wouldn't recommend using it in combat all that frequently, it is something that I could see at lower power tables being like, yeah, this is a fine damage option, I guess. It's a saver die that does probably 3 or 4d6 damage. That's not worth the second level spell slot. But it also is wildly usable outside of that instance. So
I'm looking at the description right now. Is that auto damage?
yes. So each round on your turn, you can deal a d6 damage if the phantasm's area is within 5 feet of the target, right? So wherever you've projected the image in their brain has to be next to it still. So like you can control the illusion to other things like chase and move and stuff. You ideally don't want to have to spend actions to do that. Let me double check. Target affected by the spell. I'm not entirely sure you have to spend actions to control it. It doesn't look like you can. So conceivably, if you make like an illusory tormentor, you could just say that the illusory tormentor is always staying within 5 feet of it and doing a d6 damage. If you make an illusory goat sheep monster, as we've prior established, it can just chase them around and do a d6 damage each round. It's a free d6 damage past the initial save, and that's not nothing. It being 1 save or 3 to 4d6 damage is something. It's not great, but it's fine. Again, I think you're gonna be way better off using it for its utility and for the implications. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we're agreed there. I feel like we've covered this one pretty well.
It's a really cool spell. It is definitely the kind of thing that there will be some players that will never find a use for this, and there will be other players that'll be like, every single situation we're in, I want to be casting Phantasmal Force. Yeah. This is going to vary in its power dramatically table to table based off of both the players and the DMs using it. So that's something to always keep in mind whenever you're trying to do these kinds of things. Illusions are the cheat codes of D&D. They are the way to say I have a CR 130 deity on my side at first level by just being like, yeah, that image is that deity. And if I can get people to believe it, it's true, or at least true enough to do what I want. So you can do some pretty wacky, wild, powerful things with a good force personality, some clever deception checks alongside making people see things that aren't really there. And with Phantasmal Force, the thing to them is really there. So yeah, this spell is very interesting. I would recommend trying it out if you are a player that likes this kind of thing. If you're the kind of person that wants to go into every situation and come up with a random impromptu, using the world around you, using things you know about the entities, using the vast quantity of knowledge to come up with creative solutions that involve putting things in there that normally aren't, this is definitely a spell for you. This is the kind of spell I adore. But I know a whole lot of players that read this kind of thing and it's not for them. They don't like the idea of, well, it doesn't do anything automatically. It's not a very clear tool on how I'm supposed to use it. I'm supposed to use it creatively. What does that even mean? So you'll definitely vary as to whether or not you want to use it. But again, if you're one of the players like me that like that kind of thing, this is great. I would recommend.
All right, you got a score?
I think this is a 4 out of 5. I don't think I can put most illusions or really most illusions below that, just because of how ridiculous illusion magic can be for some people to handle, and it's just really volatile, right? So there'll be, again, I said it like 3 times this video, there'll be some tables where this is bananas and the DM will not have an idea how to handle it and just say yes to everything, and then all of a sudden this Phantasmal Force is just warping the game and you're a prince at 3rd level functionally. Like you can just work your way with a little bit of minute-long Phantasmal Forces into ridiculous hierarchies and stuff. There'll be other tables where there'll be constant investigation checks. There will be a whole lot of disbelief around illusion to magic. There'll be situations where very frequently the spells will cast, even if they succeed, end up doing nothing. And in those tables, you'll be like, wow, I can't believe I cast this. This did absolutely nothing for me. But I think more often than not, you're going to have some, you'll be towards the higher end of that power, and you'll be getting some pretty cool effects. And the DM will have to be like, all right, how do I work around my players having access to an illusory thing that something believes? And that's a difficult question to answer for some.
Yeah, my head's thinking to be generous and give it a 5. There's nothing I can say against it, but my heart's just not quite as in it. I'm gonna agree with your 4.
Cool.
All right. Well, that was Phantasmal Force. Thank you, Sam. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.